Hi, this is Anil from Learning Lad and welcome back to the C programming tutorials. So in this tutorial we're gonna see how we can write a C program to read a password from the user. So normally in C programming, whenever you're gonna enter the input through the keyboard, at that time whatever the key you're gonna press in your keyboard, that particular character will be displayed on the screen. So if you guys are reading a password, at that time displaying the characters entered by the user to the screen is not going to be the convenient option. So here what we're going to do is, instead of displaying the characters entered by the user, we're going to display star or any other symbols. So here in this tutorial, before starting with this program, I want to show you guys how this program is going to behave once we done with it. So I have already created a project called password input and I have written the code of our program, which I'm going to explain in this tutorial. So before writing this code, we're going to see how this program is going to run. So I'm going to build and run this project. So it's going to be build and run, and it says please enter the password, length is 1 to 15. It means I can enter the password of minimum 1 character long or maximum 15 character long. So I'm gonna enter my password here. Once I enter the characters, instead of displaying the characters here, we are displaying the star symbol. So if I hit the enter button, it says your password is Learning Lad. So I'm gonna close this and I'm gonna build and run it again, and this time I'm not gonna enter any password. So I'm just gonna directly hit the enter button in my keyboard and it says no password entered, and I'm gonna run it one more time, and this time what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna enter a password of more than 15 characters. So I'm gonna enter my password, and when I enter the 16th character, it says your password length exceeds maximum password length. Only first 15 characters will be considered. So here actually I have entered Learning Lad rocks. So that S in rocks happens to be the 16th character of the password. That's why that S will be ignored and the previous 15 characters, which is Learning Lad rock, will be saved, and that is what is gonna display right here. Alright, now we're gonna run this one more time. So it's gonna be build and run, and this time I'm gonna enter my password, and while entering the password, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press the spaces. You guys can see actually now I am pressing the space key in my keyboard, but this program is ignoring the spaces, and also if I enter the tab key, then also it is ignoring that. And another thing is, once you enter your password, and for example I'm just gonna add some more characters here, and now if I feel that okay, I may have done some mistake here, so I just want to go back and correct it. So at that time, if I press the backspace key, then you guys can see the password has been removed and I can enter it again. So I'm gonna enter my password, and if I hit the enter button, it's just gonna display the password which I have entered right now. So these are the things will be done in the program that we're gonna write right now. So now we're gonna see how we can write this program. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna close this project, and then I'm gonna create a new project, and it's gonna be the console application, and we're gonna click on next, and I'm gonna select C, and then we need to give the project title. So I'm gonna say password input, and I'm gonna say English. That's because I'm gonna make the same tutorial in Hindi also. So if you guys are comfortable with the language Hindi, then you guys can check out that tutorial in my YouTube channel Learning Lad Hindi. Alright, now we're gonna click on next, and we're gonna click on finish. So now here in this management window inside this project, you can see the project which I have created right now, which is the password input English, and inside this sources folder, if I open it up, you guys can see some pre-written code. So I'm just gonna zoom this one so that you guys can have a better view of the code which I'm gonna write, and also I'm gonna remove all these codes, and we're gonna close this management window also, so we're gonna get some more space here. Alright. So now before writing this program, I want to tell you guys how this program is going to work. So here what we're going to do is we're gonna store the password entered by the user as a string value, and also we're gonna read one character at a time from the user. And then all of you know that in this program we're not going to be displaying the characters entered by the user to the screen. Instead of that, we're going to be displaying some symbols like star or any other symbols which you choose. So here what we're going to do is we're going to use a function called getCh. This getCh function is a special function, and what it does is it's gonna read one character at a time from the keyboard, and the special thing is, it will not display that character to the screen. So we're gonna take this advantage and we're gonna write our code. So now first we're gonna see what are the header files that we're gonna need in this program. So the first header file that we're gonna need is the stdio.h header file. So I'm going to include this header file using the preprocessor directive #include. So it's going to be stdio.h. We are including this header file because we're going to be using the functions like printf, etc. here. So the next header file that we're going to need is the string.h. So it's going to be string.h. And this string.h header file allows us to use the functions like string length function and string copy functions, which you're going to be using in this program. And the last header file that we're going to need in this program is going to be the conio.h header file. So it's going to be conio.h. Now this conio.h header file allows us to use the function getCh. So as I told you before, we're going to be depending on this function getCh because it allows us to read the character from the keyboard without displaying it to the screen. So another thing about this conio.h header file is not all the compilers support this conio.h header file. So if your compiler is not supporting this conio.h header file, then you guys can download and install the compiler which supports this file and run this program. And also if you guys are using the Linux operating system, then there is a way by using that you can use the functions available from this conio.h. So all you need to do is do a simple Google search and you'll get more information. Alright, now we're gonna write our main function. So our main function is gonna have the return type as int, and our main function is not gonna take any parameters, and we're gonna return a value of 0 from our main function. So now we need to declare the variables that we're gonna need, or that we're gonna use in our program. So the first variable that we're gonna need is a variable to store the maximum password length. So it's gonna be an integer variable, and I'm gonna call it as max password length, and I'm gonna initialize this variable with a value of 15. So this max password length variable is gonna contain the maximum characters that can be entered as a password. And another thing is this variable is going to be a constant variable in this program, which means that once I declare and initialize this variable, this variable's value will not change. And also if you guys want to have a password of maximum 8 character long or 10 character long, just change the value of this variable in your source code. And now I'm gonna make this variable as the constant variable by using this const keyword with its declaration. So the next thing that we need to do is, as I told you before, here in this program we're gonna be storing the password as a string value. And all of you know that in C programming, if you guys want to store a string value, then we need to use a character array. So we're gonna declare a character array here, and I'm gonna call my array as password, and here in this square brackets we need to specify the number of elements we want to store in this password array. So obviously you guys may be thinking like the maximum number of characters that the user can enter is gonna be 15. So we're gonna need 15 elements in this password array. So the size of this password array is gonna be 15, right? So here just gonna copy this variable now, and I'm gonna paste it here, and then we need to add +1 here. So now why we need to add this +1 here, 15 + 1, 16 elements if we're gonna be reading the password of length 15. So here, as I told you before, we're gonna be storing the password as a string value. In C programming, a string is a bunch of characters terminated by a string termination character, or the null character. So here, let's assume that this is gonna be our password array. So all of you know that the index of an array is gonna start from 0. So here in this array I have 16 elements, so the index is gonna start from 0 and the last element will be at the index 15. So now let's assume that we're just gonna have the max password length, or 15 elements in this password array. So what's gonna happen? So here, when we have the array size as 15, here this cell will not be available for us. So the first element will be at the index 0 and the last element will be at the index 14. So totally 15 elements, or totally we can save 15 characters in this array password. So here let's assume that the user is gonna enter the input, or the password as Anil. So we're gonna store A here in the first position, N in the second, and I in the third element, and L in the fourth element. So now, as I told you before, we need to terminate this with a string termination character, or the null character, because we're gonna be treating this password as a string value. So here we can add this string termination character here in the index 4. So this is gonna work properly. Now here the thing is, the user can enter maximum 15 characters. So now let's say the user is gonna enter 15 characters. So what's gonna happen? Let's say user is gonna enter learning lad rock. So here E, so C and K. So the user is gonna enter 15 characters. So now these 15 characters can be stored in this password array. So the first character L will be at the index 0 and the last character K will be at the index 14. Now, as I told you before, we're gonna be storing our password as a string value. So we need to store the string termination character. So where are we gonna store that string termination character? If we store that, it's gonna be outside this password array. So only 15 elements can be stored here in this array now. So we're gonna be storing the string termination character outside this character array. So at that case, this location may belong to some other programs. So we're gonna be altering the content of this location, so some other programs may crash, or maybe this location will be used by our own program and our program may crash or misbehave. So just to avoid these kind of situations, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add +1 here. So adding this +1 allows us another memory location where we can store this string termination character. So here the thing is, if we don't add this 1 here, at that time, if the user is gonna enter less than 15 characters, then your program will work properly. But just in case if the user is going to enter a password of 15 characters, then there is no way that you can store the string termination character inside that array. So for that purpose, we're going to be adding +1 here. Alright, now the next variable that we're going to need in this program is going to be a character variable, and I'm going to call this variable as ch. As I told you before, we're gonna be reading one character at a time from the user, so we're gonna be storing that character in this variable ch. Now the next variable that we're gonna need is called character position, and I'm gonna initialize this variable with the value of 0. So this character position variable will contain the index of this password array. It will tell us where we want to store the character. For example, when you run this program, this character position will contain a value of 0. So it will point to first position of this array. So once you store the character here in this first position, it will point to the second position. And once you store the value here, the character position variable will point to the next location. So this character position variable is used to store the index of this password array. So by default, first it will point to the very beginning of this password array. Alright, now the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna ask the user to enter the password. So I'm gonna use the printf statement, and here I'm just gonna write please enter the password, and then I'm gonna say length 1 to %d, and then let's insert a new line here, and then here we're gonna say max password length. Alright, now this will print out please enter the password length 1 to 15. So the minimum character required for this password is gonna be 1, and the maximum number of characters can present in that password is gonna be 15. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start reading the characters from the user. So as I told you before, we're gonna be reading one character at a time from the user. So we need to loop through certain set of statements, and that's why we're gonna need a loop here. So I'm gonna use a while loop, and if you guys want to use any other loop like for loop, you guys can do that. And also I'm gonna make this loop as an infinite loop. That means that, here in the condition part of this while loop, I'm gonna write 1, which is considered as true. So this condition of this while will always be true, and that's why this while loop will execute forever. So now you may be asking, okay, if you're gonna be using this infinite loop, then when we're gonna be coming out of this while loop? So here, as I told you before, we're gonna be using this loop to read one character at a time from the user. So what's gonna happen is, let's say the user is gonna enter the password one by one. So first user is gonna enter, let's say A, and then he's gonna enter N, and then he's gonna enter I, and then he's gonna enter L. So let's say this is the password of the user. So after entering his password, the user will hit the enter button. So once the user is gonna hit the enter button in his keyboard, we will come to know that, okay, this is the end of the user's password, so we need to stop here. So here in this program, what we're gonna do is when the user is gonna hit the enter button, we're gonna be coming out of this while loop. Alright, now the first thing that we need to do is we need to read a character from the user. And as I told you before, here we're gonna be using the getch function. The specialty of this getch function is it's gonna read one character at a time from the keyboard, and while doing that, it will not display that character to the screen. And also here we're gonna be storing that character in this ch variable. So it's gonna be getch. And now we have read one character by using this getch function, and also we haven't displayed this character to the screen. So the next thing is, whenever you're going to use the character variables in your program, or whenever you're going to read a character from the keyboard, at that time the ASCII value of that character will be used, which is nothing but, with this statement, whatever the character the user is going to enter in his keyboard, that character's ASCII value will be returned by this getch function, and that ASCII value will be stored in this ch variable. So now, as I told you before, we need to stop this while loop when the user is going to hit the enter button. So how we gonna come to know that the user has pressed the enter key in his keyboard? So as I told you before, the ch variable here will get the ASCII value of the key entered by the user in his keyboard. So every key has a unique ASCII value. The enter button has a separate ASCII value. The tab, space have separate ASCII values. The character ABCD also have the separate unique ASCII values. So by using that ASCII values, we're going to be checking which key the user has entered. So here, first we're going to check whether the user has pressed the enter key in his keyboard. So I'm going to use the if statement here, and it's going to be if ch equal to, remember here this equal to is the comparison operator, and I'm gonna write 13. So here this 13 is the ASCII value of the enter button. So when the user is gonna hit the enter button in his keyboard, the getch function is gonna return a value of 13, and that 13 will be stored in this ch variable. And with this statement, if the ch variable contains a value of 13, that means the user has pressed the enter key. So when the user presses enter key in his keyboard, what we want to do is we want to stop reading characters or passwords from the user. So what we want to do, we want to come out of this while loop, and for that purpose I'm gonna use the break statement here. When the user is gonna press the enter key, we're gonna be coming out of this while loop. So here I'm just gonna write a comment. So I'm gonna say when user hits enter button. All right, so now we have seen what's gonna happen if the user hits the enter button. So now the next thing is what we need to do if the user hits the backspace key. So how are we gonna check for the backspace key? So it's gonna be same as the enter key. We're gonna have a else if condition here, and here we're gonna be checking again if ch comparison operator equal to, and then the ASCII value of 8. So the ASCII value for the backspace key is 8. If the user is gonna press the backspace key in his keyboard, then this getCH function is gonna return a value of 8, and that will be stored in this ch variable. So this if condition is gonna fail because ch is containing 8. 8 is not equal to 13. So this if condition is gonna fail, and that's why this else if condition will be checked. Is ch is containing a value of 8? Yes, it is containing. So the statements inside this block will be executed. So now here whatever the statements that we're gonna write, I will explain later, because when the user is gonna hit the backspace key, at that time we need to process this password array. All right, now I just want to make a note here when the user is going to hit the backspace key. All right, now we have seen for the enter button, and also we have seen for the backspace key. Now what if the user is going to hit the tab or a space? So here in this program, when the user is going to enter the password, I don't want the tab and space to be part of the password. For example, user is going to enter a n and then space and then l. I don't want this space to be part of this password, and also I don't want the tab to be part of this password. That's why what I'm gonna do is, if the user is gonna enter a space or a tab, I just gonna ignore that. If you guys want the space and tab to be part of the password, then you don't need to write this condition. So here I'm gonna write else if, and then we're gonna check for space and tab here. So it's gonna be ch equal to 32 or ch comparison operator equal to 9. So here this 32 is the ASCII value of the space key, and this 9 is the ASCII value of the tab button. So if the user is going to hit the space key or the tab key, then what we want to do. So here what happens is, when the user is going to hit the space, this getCH function is going to return the value of 32, which is the ASCII value of the space. So this 32 will be stored in this ch, and this condition is going to fail because 32 is not equal to 13, and this condition is also going to fail because 32 is not equal to 8. So here this condition is going to fail because 32 is equal to 32, and since any one of this OR operator is going to succeed, the statement that we're going to have here will be executed. So now the thing is, what we want to do if the user is going to hit this space or the tab. As I told you before, we want to ignore the space and the tab. So all you need to do is just ignore that and continue with the next characters entered by the user. So here, to continue with the next iteration of the loop, we need to use the continue statement. So it's going to be continue here, and here let me have a quick comment, and I'm going to say when user hits space or tab. All right, so now we have seen what we need to do if the user is going to hit the enter button, what we need to do if the user is going to hit the backspace key, and also what we need to do if the user is going to hit the space or a tab. Next, we need to see what we have to do if the user is going to enter a valid character. What if the user is going to enter a key which is not the enter button, not the backspace key, or not the space or tab key? So what we're going to do is we're going to store the character entered by the user in the password array. So before storing the character in this password array, we need to make sure that our password array has enough space to store that character. So here, how we gonna check whether this password array has enough space or not? So here in this program, what happens is our character position variable, just excuse my handwriting here, I'm just using the mouse to write. So the character position variable will be pointing to this first element in the beginning. So when we're gonna read the proper character, we want to store this in this position. So once we store the character in this position, this variable will be incremented to the next position. So like that, it will be incremented till this 14th position. That's because here in this program, the user can enter a maximum of 15 characters. So if you look at this program, the 15 characters are gonna be from the index 0 to 14. In this last 15th index will be used to store the string termination character. So we can't store the value entered by the user in this last element. So we can only store the characters entered by the user from the index 0 to index 14 in this password array. So once this password array is gonna be filled, or once this password array contains all those 15 characters entered by the user, this character position variable will point to 15. So once the character position variable contains a value of 15, it means that the password array has no space to contain the character entered by the user, or in other words, the user has entered all the 15 characters that he can enter. So here we're gonna check whether this password array has space or not by using the character position variable. So my condition is gonna be if character position is containing a value which is less than 15, which is this max password length. So since the array index are going to be starting from 0, here we're going to be having less than max password length, or less than 15. So if the array has this space, what we're going to do is we're going to store the character in the password array. So we're going to store the character, and that's why first we're going to write the array name, which is going to be password, and then here we need to specify the index where we want to store, which is going to be pointed by this character position variable, and we're going to be storing the value stored in the ch variable. So this statement will store the value specified in the ch variable at the index specified by this character position variable in this array password. So after that, what we need to do is we need to increment the value of this character position variable. So the next character entered by the user will be stored in the next location. So we're gonna write character position plus plus. All right, now the next thing that we need to do is, as I told you before, the getCh function will not display the character it's gonna read. So by taking that as an advantage, what we're gonna do is we're gonna display the character that we want to display to the screen. So here I'm gonna use printf, and here I'm just gonna print out star. So here if you want to print out any other symbol, just specify that here. So this is what we're gonna do if the array has space, or if the array can contain the characters entered by the user. Else, if the array is filled, or if the user has entered all his 15 characters, then we're just gonna display a method telling that your input exceeds maximum password length of %d, so only first %d characters will be considered. So here we're gonna refer the max password length variable twice. So here we're just displaying that, once the user is gonna enter more than 15 characters, we're gonna say your input exceeds the maximum password length of 15, so we are considering only the first 15 characters you have entered. And after displaying this message, we're just gonna stop reading the characters from the user, so we can add the break statement here. Alright, now this is what we're gonna do if the user is gonna enter the proper input. Now the next thing is what we need to do if the user is gonna enter the backspace character. So we're gonna see that. So here in this program, till now what we're doing is, so here let's assume that this is gonna be the console window, which is the black command prompt window you're gonna see, and this is where we're gonna be entering your password. So first it says please enter your password maximum length 1 to 15. So here in the next line, the cursor will be blinking here, waiting for the user to enter the characters. And also for this password array, this character position variable will be pointing to the first position. Now if the user is gonna enter the character A, and at that time this A is not a space, not a tab, not a backspace, and not the enter button. So first we're gonna check whether this password array has enough space to store this character A. Yes, we have space, and that's why we're gonna store this character in this index 0 at this position, and then we're gonna increment the value of this character position variable, so it will point to the next element. It means that when we read the next character from the user, we're gonna store that in this position. And after doing that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna display a star here in this place in the command window. And after displaying the star, the cursor which was here will be moved to the next cell, so it will start blinking here. So let's say now the user is going to enter the value of B. So now this B is a proper character, means it is not a space, not a tab, not a backspace, or not the enter button. And also we have space in this password array, so this B will be stored here in this position, and then this character position variable will be incremented to point to the next location. And then we're going to be displaying a star symbol here in this place, and after that the cursor will go to next position or next cell and start blinking here. Now let's say the user is going to enter the value of C, and again this is not a space, tab, backspace, or the enter button, and also we have space in this password array, so this C will be stored in this position. After that, this character position variable will be incremented to next position, so that the next character we're gonna read from the user will be stored here. And then we're gonna display a star symbol here to the screen, and then after displaying this star symbol, the cursor will move to next position and it will start blinking here. So now let's say the user is gonna think that he has done some mistake while entering his password. So what he wants to do is he wants to go back and correct his password. So at that time the user is gonna hit the backspace key to move backwards. So here the user is gonna hit the backspace button. So now when the user is going to hit the backspace key, what he wants to do is he wants to go back to the previous position, and for that character he wants to enter a new character. Now here in this password array, our character position variable is pointing to this position. So since the user wants to go back to previous position, we need to bring back this character position to previous position. So we can do that by decrementing the value of this character position by 1. So we can make the character position variable to point to this location, and after coming to this position the user wants to change the value here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna replace this value with this null character. And then here also what we need to do is, since the cursor will be pointing here, we want to bring it back to this position, and then we want to remove this star and make the cursor blink here. For that purpose, what we need to do is we need to remove this star. So to remove this star, what we're gonna do is we're gonna override this with a blank space. So now let's once again see what we're gonna do. So here in this code, when the user is gonna hit the backspace key, first in this password array, we want to bring this character position variable one position back so that it can point to this character. So we're gonna bring it back to this position. So we need to decrement the value of this character position. So here we're gonna do that, character position minus minus, and then after doing that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the value of this location with the null value. Actually, you don't need to change the value of this cell, because when the user is gonna enter a new value, it will overwrite this value. Whatever the value stored here in this location will be overwritten. So we're just gonna overwrite this value with the null value, and we can do that by using the array name, which is the password, and the position by using the character position equal to null value, so this one. And after that, this is for the password array. Now here in this command prompt window, we need to bring the cursor from this position to this position. So we can bring the cursor back by using an escape character called /b. So we're just gonna use the printf statement, and we're gonna write /b here. So this /b will bring the cursor from this position to this position, one step backwards. Now here the star will be there. We need to overwrite this star. So to overwrite this star, we're just gonna display a blank character. So I'm just gonna add a space here, blank space here. And after that, after overwriting this star with a blank space, the cursor will again move to the next location and start blinking here. So now again we need to bring it back to this position. So we're just gonna add another /b here. So now the cursor will again come back to this position, and this will look like an empty position. And now let's say the user is gonna enter the value of E. So this E is not a space or a tab or the enter button. So this can be stored in the password array, and also we have enough space in this password array. So this character position variable is now pointing to this position at the index 2. So we're gonna be storing this E here. So whatever the null character that we have overridden here will again be overridden with the value of E. And after that, this character position will be incremented to next position again. And again here, the star will be displayed here for this cell, and again the cursor will move to next position and start blinking. So that's what is gonna happen here in this program. So now here, till what time we need to process this backspace. For example, let's say the user is gonna hit the backspace again and again and again. So now what happens is, once we are in this position, if the user is gonna hit the backspace, we're gonna come back to this position. If the user is gonna hit the backspace again, we're gonna come back to this position. If the user is gonna hit the backspace again, we're gonna come back to this position. But if the user is gonna hit the backspace again, then we can't go to this position, which is nothing but we can remove all the characters entered by the user. So once we remove all the characters entered by the user, and again if the user is gonna hit the backspace key, then we don't have anything to remove. Or here, if we look at this password array, once we remove the character which is present in the first element of this password array, we can't move backwards anymore. So we just need to stop once we reach this beginning. So here we need to have a condition in this case when the user is gonna hit the backspace key. So we can have the condition here, and the condition is if the character position is gonna contain a value which is greater than 0, then only we're gonna remove the values entered by the user. So once this character position's value becomes 0, at that time, we're gonna be removing this character, and after that we can't move backwards. We're gonna stop right here, after reaching the start of this password array, or after removing all the characters entered by the user. So now this program will work properly for the backspace keys entered by the user. Now the next thing is what we want to do after reading all the characters entered by the user. So here, as I told you before, we're gonna be storing the password as the string value. So after reading all the passwords entered by the user, we need to add the string termination character at the end for that password. So here from the user, we're not reading the string termination character. We are just reading the whatever the character entered by the user. For example, if the user is going to enter ABCD, then we are reading this ABCD and we are storing this in the password array. We're not adding the string termination character. Since we are storing our password like a string, we need to add this string termination character. We're going to add that outside this while loop. So it's going to be password. And then here the position will be pointed by the character position equal to the string termination character. And after that, the last thing that we want to do is we want to check whether the user has entered any password. If the user has entered any password, we're just going to display that, else we're going to say user has not entered any password. So what can happen is when the command prompt is going to display the user to enter the password, at that time user can directly hit the enter button. So at that time, we will not be reading any character from the user. So we're just gonna check that whether the password array contains any characters entered by the user. So to check whether the user has entered any password, we're gonna use the string length function. Since we are storing this password as a string value, we can check out the length of the string. If the user has entered any password, then there will be some length, otherwise the length will be 0. So we're gonna check that. So it's gonna be if strlen, which is the string length function on this password array, if it is equal to 0, then we're just gonna say using the printf function that no password entered, else if the length is not 0, then we're just gonna display the password entered by the user. So here is gonna be printf, and here we're gonna say password is %yes, and here we're gonna refer password. And also before this statement, let's add a new line just to make our output pretty. Just the /n character, escape character, to add the new line. Now I'm gonna save this program and I'm gonna build and run this. And now please enter the password length 1 to 15. So my password is gonna be, and now you guys can see once I enter the password, it is not displayed to the screen, only the star will be displayed. And if I hit the enter button, it says password is learning lad. And I'm gonna run it again, and this time I'm gonna enter no password, and I'm just gonna directly hit the enter button. It says no password entered, and I'm gonna build and run it again, and this time I'm gonna enter password, and then I'm gonna hit space, and then I'm gonna hit tab button. You guys can see those characters will be ignored here, and then I'm gonna enter some other characters, and I'm gonna hit the enter button. It says password is Anil Shetty, and I'm gonna run it again, and this time I'm gonna enter my password. And then I just gonna think that, okay, I may have entered the wrong password, so I just wanna correct it by pressing the backspace key. And this time I'm gonna enter some more text after correcting my password, and I'm gonna hit the enter button. It says password is Anil, and again I'm gonna run it again, and this time I'm gonna enter a password of length more than 15. So I'm gonna enter learning lad rock. Your input exceeds maximum password length of 15, so only first 15 character will be considered, and it says password is learning lad rock. Actually, I just entered learning lad rocks, and that S happens to be the 16th character, so that will be ignored, and the previous, or the first 15 character will be considered, and that is learning lad rock. So this is how our program is going to work. Now, if you guys may want to develop a program where you're going to be checking the password entered by the user to some previously saved password, and depending on that comparison, you're going to say the login was successful or not, then you guys can do that with this program also. Just going to add another character array here, char, and then I'm going to call that array as login password, and then I'm going to store a string in this login password, so it's going to be learning lad. And also remember that I have added this L as capital both the times, so I just need to remember this while entering the password. So now we're gonna check for the password entered by the user with this password. So if this matches, then we're gonna say login success, else we're gonna say login failure. So I just want to comment out this printf statement, which is here in the else block, and then we're gonna have another if statement, and it's gonna be string comparison strcmp, and we're gonna compare our password with the login password, and if this function is gonna return 0, it means that both the passwords has matched, and in that case we're just gonna print out login success. This strcmp function is going to return a value of 0 if these two strings match, these two arrays containing the same characters. Else we're just going to say login failure. So it's going to be login failure, and I'm going to save this program, and then I'm going to build and run this. And this time I'm going to enter my password as Anil, and if I hit the enter button, it says login failure, and I'm going to run it again, and this time I'm going to enter learning lad in small letters, all small letters, and it says login failure because I need to enter it just like the way I have specified here, make both the else as capital, and this time I'm going to enter my password just like the way I have specified here, learning lad, and then I'm gonna hit the enter button. It says login success. Now if you guys want to ignore this case while comparing the passwords, then you guys can use the stricmp function, which will ignore the case. So this is it guys, this is how you guys can read the password from the user, and instead of displaying those characters to the screen, you guys can display the star or any other symbols. So if you guys think that you guys have learned something from this tutorial, then please subscribe to my channel, and also like this video and share it with your friends and colleagues. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.